Everyone. Greetings from CynoDent and the Dentistry Excellence Conclave 2025. One of the most exciting and foremost growing of the medical sciences. We are all gathered here today to discuss the topic epidemiology. And of course, I am biased as I'm a public health dentist. But maybe after you hear a little bit about it, you all will think as me. So the thing about epidemiology that makes us so fascinating is, in my opinion, it's the only medical science that probably doesn't involve a halt of medicine. And also, some epidemiologists are medical detectives. They that on the ground, collecting data, talking to people, solving mysteries about what can be the causes of the disease in a population, just like a police investigator. So today we are going to learn about the definition of epidemiology after knowing a little bit about the history. Then the insights provided are going to cover the causes, the patterns, the tools, the uses of epidemiology, along with the classification. Then it's public health relevance, along with studying the most important things about epidemiology and its relation with oral health. The general epidemiology in public health dentistry examines the distribution and determinants of oral health conditions across populations. It includes various classification and methodologies that guide public health strategies to enhance dental health outcomes. Understanding the prevalence of dental diseases and risk factor is essential for evaluating the effectiveness of intervention. So when we talk about epidemiology, the most common name which you might have heard before comes to our mind is John Snow. John Snow, way back in 1813, and in between 1813 and in the year somewhere around 18th century, he discovered the reason behind the causation of a disease, that the source of behind the disease known as cholera, which was an outbreak in this London Soho city. And he is considered one of the founders of epidemiology and early germ theory. Snow's findings inspired fundamental changes in the water and waste systems of London, and which led to similar changes in another city and significant improvement in general public health around the world. So he introduced it in the year when there was very rare for people to know about epidemiology or the causes behind any disease. So when we talk about epidemiology, the first and most important thing which comes, and we cannot avoid its discussion, is the definition. So there are many definitions given, but the most accepted one is the definition given by John M. Last. According to John, the epidemiology is the study of how health-related events and states are distributed and what determines them in specific population. It also includes applying this study to control and prevent health issues, and he gave this definition way back in the year 1988. If we talk about epidemiology, the most easiest way to understand is if we divide the word into three. So epi means upon or study done among. Demi or demus comes out from the word demus, which shows the people or the population over which the study is going to occur. Logos means study. That is the logy. So the word logy has come up with the word logos. So the complete word forms epidemiology, where it is clearly shows the study done upon people is epidemiology. Easy to understand? Let's move forward. That is the epidemiology studies the nature, the cause of any disease. If we actually we try to understand what epidemiology is, basically the study of any disease, its causation, is distribution, its the the things responsible for carrying out, and its effective activities needed for successful epidemiological practices for the betterment of any society. Epidemiologists, if we talk about epidemiology, then epidemiologists come to our mind. So epidemiologists are the individuals who do clinical studies or do it in a population and know the main causes and do the researches and talk about, come up with the solution or the treatment or the remedy of any uh, disease or the under which the society or the person or place are suffering with. So the disease does not occur randomly. Disease has identified uh, over the basis of its causes and altered, and therefore to prevent diseases, epidemiologists have been constantly working on it. So if we talk about the latest disease which has occurred or which has actually affected the whole world is COVID-19. So when the COVID started, it were the epidemiologists who got to know about the main pattern of the disease, and then the remedies were being formed by them, and they were the ones who actually came up with the solution by going into the society and communities to know about the importance of eradicating this disease from the society. Some most common terms which we need to know about epidemiology before going on to the details of the classification knowledge. We need to just know about the terms like epidemic. So when we are talking about epidemic, it is about something which is widespread. It is the disease is given in an area or population. Then next important term which very often comes is outbreak. So similar to epidemic, but often used to describe a smaller geographical area. The disease, like any disease which has just uh, occurred or has just begun, so it is called outbreak of a disease in any particular area. Next comes pandemic. So when we're talking about pandemic, it shows the wider world, that is the universal. So an epidemic that has spread across multiple countries or continents becomes pandemic. So in the beginning, if we're talking, we have taken an example of COVID. So COVID was actually endemic in the beginning. So the disease that was present in a very small population. That is, it began in the country China, where it was, I would say, endemic in the initial state. Then later it became epidemic, where it was spreading uh, very fast, and the population and the area was increasing. So it became epidemic. And then later it became pandemic. Pandemic, it means that the disease has was spreading across multiple countries, and it was universally, it was present. But then due to with the help of our epidemiologists and the great scientists and researchers, we came across the solution as well. COVID is a history now. So when we talk about another term which is most commonly used in epidemiology is the incidence. So the number of new cases of a disease in a population over a period of time is called incidence. Then comes the prevalence. So the number of existing cases of a disease in a population at a given time is called prevalence of any disease. Next, very important thing which we need to know about is the factors which are responsible for our health. So they are also known as determinants of health or health determinants. So these are the factors that affect a person's health. So these factors can be biological, environmental, behavioral, or social. They can be multifactorial as well. And when we're talking about determinants of health, the morbidity and mortality plays a very important role. So let's see what all determinants of health are available here. So it is the nutrition, the lifestyle, environment, genetics, and the social and the medical care which are available. It eventually everything on together affects our health, and it is the determinant of health due to which these are the very important factors which determine how well you and me can be. When we talk about epidemiology, the most important purpose of epidemiological study is to determine the amount and distribution of a disease population. Then a next purpose should be to investigate causes for the disease and to apply the knowledge we have gathered to control and prevent the disease from the talking about the aims of epidemiological research should be based on following aspects. First, it should describe the health status of the population, to access the public health importance of diseases, to describe the natural history of disease, explain the etiology of disease, predict the disease occurrence, to evaluate the prevention of control of any disease, control the disease distribution by describing epidemiology, analyzing it, and then applying it for the betterment. Last, to promote the health and well-being of society as a whole should be the important aim of an epidemiological research. So the epidemiological approaches for any problem related to health and disease is based on two major foundations. First, asking questions, and then making comparisons. So when we are talking about asking question, epidemiology is a means of learning or asking questions, like where the event occurred or the problem has occurred or began. What was the magnitude of any problem? Where did it happen? When did it happen? The time? Who all are affected? The population? Why did it happen? What can be the reason behind any particular disease? And then related to based on these questions, the health-related actions are to be taken. It should be based on what can be done to reduce this problem which we have come up with and its consequences, and how can it be prevented in the future. What action should be taken by the community to overcome the problem? What resources are required and what all are available? What difficulties may arise? And then making comparison with the population which is available for the research. Then next we talk about the main tools of measurement. When we are talking about till now we have known about how to proceed with the research, but the main tools are the rates, ratios, and the proportion. The rate is the tool to measure the occurrence of some particular event in a population during a given time. Ratio expresses a relation in size between two random components, and a proportion is a ratio which indicates the relation in magnitude of the part of the whole, and the numerator is always including the denominator as a percentage. Next, very important part of the epidemiology we are going to study is the classification of epidemiology, or the epidemiological methods, or the classification of epidemiological studies. So when we talk about epidemiological studies, it's basically divided into two. One is observational study, where the natural exposure is happening and we are just observing without disturbing the nature. Second is the experimental. as the name itself suggests, it is the experiment is going to be done by the researcher in the natural procedure, and the exposure will be given by the epidemiologist. Next, the observational study is again further divided into descriptive and analytical. So descriptive, as the name itself suggests, we are just describing the given condition of the health and the population. And when we're talking about the analytical studies, we are we are observing, just analyzing, but with comparison. So it is again further divided into cross-sectional studies, case control studies, and the cohort study. So in the next part, we are going to elaborate the observation and experimental studies. To start with the epidemiological methods, another way of showing it or the classification is present here. It can be observation and experimental studies. Observation, we are just describing and analyzing, and in experimental, usually it is described under randomized control trials, field trials, or control trials. So when we talk about observational study, first classification is the descriptive epidemiology, or the studies which are just described at the first phase of an epidemiological investigation, and the studies are concerned with observing the distribution of disease or health related characteristics in human population, and identifying the characteristics with which the disease in question seems to be associated. Questions basically asked is, when is the disease occurring, the time period, where is it occurring, the place distribution, and who all are getting affected, the people or the person distribution needs to be recorded under descriptive epidemiology. So the procedure in descriptive epidemiology goes beginning with defining the population to be studied. Next step, defining the disease under the study. And then we proceed towards describing the disease on the basis of time, place, and person. Next, the measurement of disease comes with comparison with known biases and formulating an etiological hypothesis. When we're talking about the population again and again, the population is vast, it's very big. So descriptive studies are investigations of population, not individual. It is done in a group. The first step to define the population is based not only in terms of number, but in terms of age, gender, occupational, cultural characteristics, and similar information needed for the study. So the defined population can be the whole population in a geographical area, or a representation of a particular community, or a sample taken from it. The defined population can be specially selected groups such as age, gender groups, occupational groups. They can be based on the place where the the study population has taken. It can be schools, it can be hospitals, it can be small communities, or it can be the wider grouping as well. Then next step, which we said, defining the disease under study, is after the population is selected, the population is defined clearly, then the disease to be studied is to be specified, and the condition to be investigated must be defined by the epidemiologist. The defined population needs to be large enough, a very important factor which we need to know before beginning of any research or study, and the communities selected should be stable. So here, with that, we have discussed about the descriptive study. Next is analytical study. The first is cross-sectional study. Cross-sectional study is the simplest form of observational study. It is based on a single examination of a cross-section of the population at one time, the result of which can be projected on a whole population. Next can be longitudinal study. In this type of study, the observations are repeated in the same population over a prolonged period of time, but by means of follow-up examination, by comparing it with the known biases or etc. Then comes the formation of the hypothesis. The hypothesis, we all know, is the idea with which the study is being progressed. By studying the distribution of disease, utilizing the techniques given of descriptive epidemiology, it is often possible to formulate a hypothesis relating to disease etiology. So, an hypothesis can be accepted or rejected later by the team, but after working over the population and the uh, place and the gender and the duration, we make an hypothesis over with which we are going to proceed in our researches. So, uses of descriptive epidemiology is vast and very important. So because it provides data regarding the magnitude of the disease. Then it provides clues to disease etiology. It provides background data for planning, organizing, evaluating, preventing, and curative services. They also contribute to research by describing variation in disease occurrence by time, place, and person. Next, when we talk about analytical epidemiology, in analytical study, the subject of the interest is the individual within the population. The object is not to formulate, but to test the hypothesis which is being formed. It consists of two distinct types of observational studies, case control and cohort study. In case control study, it is called as retrospective study or the prospective study. So the retrospective study features on both exposure and outcome have occurred in the beginning before the start of the study, and the study proceeds backward from the effect to the cause. So suppose if we are talking about the population we have taken is the cancer patients, oral cancer. So the disease has already occurred, but we are going to look back into the history of the patient and try to know what can be the reason. So the study proceeds backward from the effect to the cause. So effect has already occurred. The person's people or the community is already suffering with oral cancer, and we are going backward to know the cause of it. It can be tobacco chewing or genetics or exposure to any kind of ultraviolet rays, etc. So what we are doing here is we are trying to know the causes of the disease in, in this particular study design, that is the case control, and it uses a control or comparison to support or refute an inference. So the steps by which we are going to proceed is first step, by selection of the cases in control. Second, we do matching. Third, the measurement of exposure impact. And last, analysis and interpretation. So when we're talking about the selection of the cases in control, the case is defined as the prior definition of which would constitute a case is a crucial, or we would say the group of people who have been diagnosed with particular diseases will become a group known as the case group. The eligibility criteria for the cases will be the criterion employed is requirement that only newly diagnosed cases will be involved. And sources of cases may be drawn from the hospitals or schools or from the general population. It can be taken for the random survey to be done. Then comes the second group, that is the control group. And the selection of control group is must be free from the people selected for under the control group are usually free from the disease which is under the study. They might have similar, they can be have similar characteristics, like they can be of same gender, they can be of same age, they can be the resident of same area. But the most important thing the people of control group should be is that they should be free from the disease which is being studied. Next, after selection of the cases in control, the matching is done. For matching is defined as the process by which we select controls in such a way that they are similar to the cases with regard to certain pertinent selected variables which are known to influence the outcome of disease and which, if adequately matched for comparable, uh, less bias is expected. Next is the confounding factor. One which is associated with both the exposure and the disease and is distributed unequally in study and the control group. Example, in the study of the role of alcohol in etiology of the esophageal cancer, smoking, it becomes the confounding factor. So the measurement of exposure. Measurement of exposure is the information for exposure should be obtained before the study in cases and control was. Then next step, last step is the analysis, interpretation. So the final step is analysis to find out the exposure rate among cases and control and estimation of the risk associated with exposure. Next analytical study which we have to cover is cohort study. Cohort study is done to obtain additional evidence to refute or support the existence of an association between suspected cause and risk. Cohort study is known as prospective study, longitudinal study, incidence study, and forward-looking study. So remember, we in case control study, we were talking about the respective study where we were going from effect to the cause. Here in cohort study, it is looking, it is the forward-looking study. That is, we go from the cause to the effect. So suppose if we have taken an example of the oral cancer, if we are talking about the people suffering with oral cancer and going back to the root cause of the disease, that is the case control. But when talking about cohort, we will observe that people who are actually observing tobacco present might get, or how many of them actually get oral cancer, any kind of oral cancer. But then that is the forward-looking study, and that is considered to be a cohort study. So the study features of cohort study are the identifying, the group are identified prior to the appearance of disease under investigation. So the disease hasn't occurred, but the group has been observed that this particular group can in future have the study groups are observed over a period of time to determine the frequency of disease, and the study proceeds forward from cause to the effect. So, the types of cohort study can be prospective cohort study, the retrospective cohort study, and the combination of retrospective and prospective cohort studies. So, prospective cohort study is the one where the outcome has not yet occurred at the time of the investigation begin, but the most studies begin in the present and continue in the future. But retrospective is the one in which the outcome have all occurred before the start of the investigation, and the investigator goes back in time and then the records are being collected, and this is called historical or prospective study in retrospective and non-concurrent prospective study. So the combination of retrospective study and prospective cohort study, in this both the retrospective and prospective elements are combined, and the cohort is identified from past record and is assessed of dates for the outcome. So the same cohort is followed by up prospectively into future for future assessments of outcome. So the elements are the selection of any subject, study subjects, obtaining data on exposure, and the selection of comparative groups by the follow-up and the last analysis. Next, so with this we have finished with the observational study, and we will talk about the experimental study. So the experimental study is often equated with randomized trials. It is mainly of two types: randomized control trial and non-randomized control trial. It is done under different steps. To begin with, drawing up a protocol. That's very important. Selecting reference and experimental population over which the experiment will be done. The manipulative or the intervention which will be done on the given population. The follow-up period needs to be decided, and then the assessment of the outcome. So with this, we come to the end of the classification, and I hope it has been, I know it's very vast, but it is a very important topic for you all to understand. So after finishing with the classification, we'll talk about the uses of epidemiology. So the uses is to study the historically the rise and fall of disease to the certain population, community diagnosis, planning and evaluation, evaluating of individual risk and chances, syndrome identification, completing the natural history of disease, searching for cause and the risk factors. Whenever we are talking about any disease, most important is the epidemiological triad. Epidemiological triad shows that for the occurrence of any disease, there needs to be the combination of these three very important parts, which is the agent, the host, and the environment. So, agent is the organism, a substance or a force with which the presence or lack of which may initiate a disease process or may cause it to be continued. It can be the bacteria, the microorganisms, the chemical and physical agents, etc. When we're talking about the host is a person or an animal that affords subsistence lodgement to an infectious agent under natural conditions. It can be because of the demographic characteristics based on the age, gender, race, biological characteristics, genetic, immunity, the nutritional level, the socioeconomic status of people, the religion, the marital status, the lifestyle, the living habits and food habits. There are n number of things which come under host. And then the third and the most important thing is environment. It is the source of reservoir for the agents of disease. It can be physical, biological, and social. So whenever we are talking about epidemiological triad, that is a diverse of disease transmission, these three main characteristics need to be present until they are all there for present over the period of time. The disease would not occur in the absence of any one factor. So when we are again talking about epidemiology of oral diseases, it is very important. So far we have studied the classification, the study, and now we will cover the epidemiology and its relation to the oral diseases and how it is going to benefit you as a dentist in future. So dental epidemiology is here to encapsulate epidemiology of oral diseases. Knowledge about the burden, trends, and causes of oral disease comes from finding of dental epidemiology. Such understanding provides a basis for assessing and determining needs to population communities and oral diseases are among the most prevalent globally and have serious health and economic burden, greatly reducing quality of life for those affected. The most prevalent and consequential oral disease globally are dental caries, periodontal disease, tooth loss, and the cancer of lip and nasal cavity. Although oral diseases are largely preventable, they persist with high prevalence, reflecting widespread social and economic inequalities and inadequate funding for prevention and treatment, particularly in low-income and middle-income countries, are one of the very basic main reasons for not able to cover with the occurrence of oral disease. In other words, oral conditions are chronic and strongly socially patterned since in many lower and middle income countries, oral diseases remain largely untreated because the treatment cost exceeds available resources. So coming on to the clinical overview of oral disease. The key clinical conditions that are considered to be global public health priorities include dental caries, periodontal disease, and so we are going to we will try to cover all the three topics and how it is important for us as a dentist to know the basic epidemiology behind these particular oral conditions. So first we will cover the epidemiology of dental caries. Dental caries is defined as irreversible microbial disease of the calcified tissue of the tooth, characterized by demineralization of the inorganic portion and destruction of the organic substance of the tooth, which often leads to cavitation. This definition is given by Sheffield, and the word caries is defined from Latin word meaning brought. Epidemiological factors of dental caries. Whenever again, I just mentioned some time back that for occurrence of any disease, the three main factors need to be present. That is the agent, host, and environment. But now, recently, a fourth factor, that is the time, is also being considered. So this concept is shown in the Caries diagram, where all the factors must be present and must interact with each other for dental caries to develop. So the host, agent, environment, along with the time, will cause dental caries. So in this diagram, we can appreciate that it shows that how all the three factors, when they come together, they are the main cause of the disease. And in the next diagram, it is shown the involvement of the fourth factor, which is the time, and over the period of time, when all the three factors remain intact, then a disease occurs. So the host factors that contribute to dental caries include teeth, saliva, and immune response of the oral cavity. So the teeth, tooth enamel, the strength of the tooth enamel is a genetic factor that affects the risk of caries. The shape of the tooth is a genetic factor. Tooth surface is another host, which shows the properties of the teeth, which can affect the risk of caries. Saliva, salivary flow, the rate of the saliva is produced can affect the risk of caries. The saliva buffering capacity, the ability of saliva to buffer acids can affect the risk of caries. Saliva antimicrobial activity, the ability of saliva to kill bacteria can affect the risk of caries. Then comes the immune response, oral cavity, immune surveillance, the ability of immune system to monitor the oral cavity for bacteria can affect the risk of caries. Other factors that can contribute to dental caries are diet, microflora, age, gender, race, geographical location, social class, social economic status, and health. Coming on to the agent factors for dental caries, the primary agent factor in dental caries is bacteria, specifically acid-producing bacteria like Streptococcus pyogenes, which ferment carbohydrates in the mouth, creating acids that demineralize the tooth enamel and lead to decay. Other contributing factors including the presence of susceptible tooth surface, dietary carbohydrates, and time for the process to occur, often referred to as four-factor theory of dental caries. Microorganisms are another important host factor, the agent which the agent, which is the bacterial biofilm on the tooth surface, with Streptococcus mutans being most commonly implicated species. If we talk about the environmental factors contributing to dental caries, diet comes into environment also. So the frequent consumption of sugary foods and drinks is a primary contributor to caries, as the bacteria and plaque convert sugar into acids that demineralize the teeth. The oral hygiene, not brushing teeth regularly and effectively, allows plaque to accumulate, increasing the risk of plaque. The fluoride exposure, insufficient fluoride intake through water or toothpaste on primitive enamel and make it more susceptible to decay. The socioeconomic status. The individual with lower socioeconomic status may have limited access to dental care and may have diets higher in sugar, contributing to increased dental caries risk. Salivary flow, early childhood feeding practices are also one of the very important factors. Then next comes the climate. The climate in which you live can affect your health care. You will be surprised to know that in dry climate, individuals are more prone to dry mouth, which can increase the risk of cavity and other dental issues. Conversely, in highly humid environments, fungal infections like thrush may be more common. So the climate and humidity plays a very important role under the environment factor for the formation of dental caries. If you talk about dental caries, after knowing that how it affects our society and community, it is still it's a burden largely affecting the society and the developing countries. Nevertheless, the continuous and significant presence of dental caries in population with its prime determinants is operating in relatively large number of populations. So further exploration using epidemiology as a tool will certainly throw a light on understanding and management of dental caries. So with this tools, we have covered with epidemiology of dental caries. And next, which we are going to talk about, the oral condition is periodontal disease. So the periodontium is defined as those tissues supporting and investing the tooth, comprises of gingiva, cementum, periodontal ligament, alveolar bone. The diagram is showing all the two parts. Periodontal diseases is a term which includes all pathological conditions of the periodontium. Traditionally, all periodontal diseases were classified into gingival diseases first and periodontal diseases. So the epidemiological side again comes here to play the main role, that is the host agent and factors. Environmental factors will come together to cause any periodontal disease. So the host factors are the age, the intraoral variation, the age more with the older age group, 40 plus, it is observed that periodontal diseases are commonly found. Then comes the gender. It has been observed that the female girls have are affected more than boys. And gender, it has been observed that race-wise, the black people are affected more than whites. If you talk about intraoral radiation, gingivitis is more seen in intercoccygeal areas than buccal and lingual. Severity of bone loss, incisor and molar areas are more severely involved than canine molars, and maxillary teeth experience more bone loss compared to mandible. The endocrine changes can have also been observed. The chances are more puberty, menstruation, and pregnancy. Hyperthyroidism and hyperparathyroidism can be the main endocrinal cause for periodontal disease. Then the traumatic occlusion, sharp cut, acts as puncture and lead to peritonitis. Tooth position, irregular time, alignment, unclean areas, pocket formation due to irregular teeth and the tooth position can also be one of the major causes. The occupational habits, the neurosis, that is the habits like proximity, lip, cheek, and nail biting, and the use of tobacco, the components present in the tobacco lower the tissue resistance, can also be the host factor. Then misuse of the toothbrush, not proper toothbrushing and brushing in a wrong manner, the horizontal irregular toothbrushing habit can cause periodontal disease. The concomitant disease, there is tendency towards alveolar bone destruction in patients with uncontrolled diabetes. And income and education is another host factor where periodontal diseases are being observed with increase and decrease in income, and the education level is also inversely related. The agent factors includes the plaque and calculus. So the dental plaque is primarily the etiological factor for periodontal, which is defined as the soft deposits that form the biofilm adhering to the tooth surface, disrupting the balance between plaque, bacteria, and host results in periodontal diseases. Dental plaque is divided again into travel and subtravel plaque. Next, we talk about the dental calculus. Calculus is adherent calcified mass that forms on the surface of the natural tooth and the dental prosthesis. It consists of mineralized plaque. So the calculus would again be divided into supragingival and subgingival calculus. So the supragingival calculus is the white or whitish yellow color. It's found to be maximum in the upper first molars. And subgingival, it turns dark brown or greenish black in color. It is found to be the maximum in lower central and atrials, and followed by upper first molar, upper anterior, and upper secondary. It is found to be lower, at least in lower first and secondary molar, and lower third molar. If we talk about environmental factors of periodontal diseases, first comes the geographical variation, high in the highest in places like Chile and Jordan and India, Malaysia, intermediate covers the US, Colombia, Ethiopia. While dentists are deprived in these areas. So the nutrition is another environmental factor where high in niacin deficiency and avitaminosis is observed. An International Committee on Nutrition for National Defense said that there is no consistent association between periodontal and nutrition items. So, but still, it's been observed that lack of vitamin C and niacin, high content of niacin, can cause gingivitis and affect the gingival periodontal. The severity of periodontal disease were found in areas with protein malnutrition and vitamin deficiency. The degree of urbanization, the rural population seems to suffer more from periodontal compared to urban population. Stress is said to be the predisposing factor to illness, and it is often seen in exam going students. So don't take stress, guys. Might get your Java or oral cavity infected. Right. Next, we'll talk about the epidemiology of oral cancer, the third and most important condition which, as an epidemiologist or as undergraduate or postgraduate student, all must know about. So, oral cancer is one of the 10 leading cancers of the world, and for developing world, it ranks fourth. In males, it is the third most common cancer, and in females, it ranks fourth. In India, it is the most common cancer. Unfortunately, it has been observed because in our country, tobacco selling and tobacco consumption is not being prohibited to that for tobacco and alcohol consumption. when we talk about oral cancer, severe risk factors are associated with increased incidence of oral cancer. These factors may be classified as required. Again, under host, age, environmental factors. Under host, the age, gender, site distribution, family history, heredity, all comes under host. When we talk about agent factor, the tobacco consumption, alcohol consumption, syphilis, and precancerous lesions which are left untreated can result to formation of oral cancer. The nutritional deficiency also is a very important cause for oral cancer. The virus like herpes can also become cancerous if left untreated. The level of heat, trauma, specific point on and sepsis, and irritation from the shaft and denture constantly at a particular place can also be the agent factor for causing dental oral cancer. The environmental factors cover lifestyle changes, the urbanization, social factors, the stress level, the socioeconomic status. All these things come under environmental factors, and the main reason for causing the occurrence of oral cancer. So the most common cause of oral cancer is tobacco. We're going to know a little bit about tobacco, which is derived from the species of the plant of genus Nicotiana in the potato family, and the use of tobacco are of three types. They are tobacco smoking, there are tobacco chewing, and tobacco snuffing. So the tobacco smoking is done in two different forms. Bidi, cigarette, cigar, hookah, chilla, hookah are different forms of smoking. So the global epidemiological overview of oral diseases, according to the global burden of disease in 2015 study, around 3.5 billion people worldwide live with dental conditions, predominantly untreated dental caries and the residents, permanent condition, untreated periodontal infections which lead to tooth loss, tobacco chewing habit, and severe lesions which are untreated can lead to oral cancer. So, according to International Agency of Research on Cancer, lip and oral cavity cancers were among the top 15 most common cancers in the world by 2008. So, it is really unfortunate to know that how oral disease can actually affect the lifestyle of an individual, but still it is not considered as a crime and not being taken care of by the policymakers, by the country. So with this, we come to the end of the epidemiology and its relatable oral diseases, which are affecting our public health globally, and its prevalence in the society and community are also affecting and they are so chronic and progressive in nature. They start in early childhood, progress through adolescence and adulthood into later life. But because dental treatment cannot solve this problem alone, a radical different approach is now needed to tackle this global health challenges. So the importance of epidemiology in dentistry, I hope it's understood by you all by this time, that how important it is to study the disease upon particular population distribution, to know the value and understand the burden on our society, as it's very high. The study of epidemiology, the importance of epidemiology identifies high-risk population, evaluates public health programs, and it also guides the policy making by informed decision, resource allocation, public health. So the research aims in epidemiology, prevalence and incidences. It covers the risk factors and the preventive measures. So it is very important that through epidemiological studies, we cover and determine the prevalence and identify the risk factors and eventually try to evaluate the impact of preventive measures and uh, the method by which the epidemiological studies are done are the data collection method. It can be through surveys, clinical trials, and observational studies which we have studied. And the statistical analysis in epidemiology is done by various methods, which is to utilize statistical methods, interpretations of data done effectively, and to understanding relationships, explore connections between variables, informed decision making, supports evidence-based choices, also important for statistical analysis. So the epidemiology in policy making is also plays a very important role. It informs public health policy, aids in formulating policies to reduce dental diseases, provides evidence for funding, supports community health initiatives, facilitates the development of health programs in our communities. And the community health assessment is purely and thoroughly uh, done by epidemiologists. I hope it is being understood by the audience today that how important it is to evaluate oral health, identify the needs, and then address it by the oral health disparities through the policy. Oral health disparities still remains, so focuses on oral health outcomes among various populations, examines the differences, identifies determinants, develops interventions. So a quick revision of all the topics which have been covered. And in the last, we say that making preventive strategies is very important for any disease or to avoid any disease. It is that prevention is always very important. So the community education is the first key to start with the preventive strategies. So education is definitely a very important source for our society to address and to recover from any disease to occur in the future. For that, regular checkups should be encouraged by the dentist, and a fluoride program should be completed and incorporated in the clinics, so that the impact of socioeconomic factors by income and education, access to care is also taken care of by the health planners and epidemiologists. Again, we talk about the behavioral risk factors. It identifies the lifestyle choices, develops intervention, promotes healthy habits. The global perspective in dental epidemiology covers the oral health trends, cultural impact, and national collaboration as well. Technologies are also advanced. The digital tools, the disease tracking devices, and telehealth support are also available. So education and training in epidemiology is very important for the because it provides the resource for continuing education in dental epidemiology and encourages the interdisciplinary collaboration with researchers. So the future direction in dental epidemiology to emerging oral health challenges, impact of aging population, and the role of gender. The ethical consideration in research is also very important factors to protect the participants. The consent should be taken by the study population or by the patient, clinics, or hospitals in the future. And the transparency in reporting is very important so that both the parties know uh, the adequate usage of the research findings. So the community engagement in research involves the community, the local health issues are also addressed to ensure the studies address relevant local health issues, and the trust and collaboration is developed by epidemiological studies. The evaluation of public health programs is also one of the very important factors, assessing effectiveness to evaluate the success of dental health initiatives, feedback for improvement, and provide insights for enhancing program quality, and ensure that the responsible use of public health funding is also being taken care of. The integration of oral health at the top, the definition of the link, the acknowledgement, and then the promote the integration of oral health also promotes the holistic approach as a society of an epidemiologist, and encourages collaboration between dental and medical professionals. So the role of dental practitioners as an epidemiologist is to collect data for the community health assessment, and then on the basis of evidence-based practices in clinical settings can be adequately applied to our researches. Coming on to the challenges in dental epidemiology, there are the data availability addresses issues of data quality. The research barriers are there, like overcomes barriers to, if we overcome the barriers to conducting research in diverse population with the funding limitation, we can do wonders and come across, and we can overview the limitations for public health issues. So we would just conclude today's lecture with the understanding of good health. We all must have understood that epidemiology helps in improving the patient outcomes by statistically effectively making strategy, utilizing methodologies to address dental health issues. And we all know the most important reason is its impact on our community, because it influences community well-being and health policy. Sure. So I hope the topic was well understood, and by the end of this topic, you're also fond of the epidemiology and understood what epidemiology is.